This week, we started off with a little bit of coffee talk about the weather and deer hunting, both now and then. In the second half, we'll have elevators. And we're not talking about the kind of elevators that bring you up to the second or third floor. We're talking about Sentinels of the Prairie, the grain elevator. All of that's coming up right here on the Rural Reflections Podcast. Welcome to another edition of the Rural Reflections Podcast. In Carrington, North Dakota, it's Dave Nelson. In Thief River Falls, Minnesota, it's Grant Nelson. That's me. Hello, Dave. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. We've got a little bit colder weather this morning. It was even blowing and a little bit of snow. But we were talking before we got on the air here, and you were saying maybe a little bit of warmer weather coming up.
Well, yeah, they were forecasting next week to start cooling off, But now I looked at the forecast this morning, and they're showing mid-50s by middle of the week. It's going to be cool today and windy, but it's just fine with me if we have another nice week of warm weather, or 2 or 3, maybe.
That'd be just fine with me, too. Now, Thursday evening, just west of Viking on the old Casbrick farm, which our dad used to own, and then now our nephew Jamie owns, had a pretty good-sized railroad derailment. I'd say about 12 cars full of grain came off the rail and went into the ditch, and now they've drug them into the woods, and they're building a road back there to empty them out and then be able to get the cars. I don't know if they go and put them back up on the rail or if they haul them out. I think they're probably going to have to haul them out. It looks like all the trucks are off to the side, but that was really something to see, Dave, to see those massive cars kind of all stacked up together.
Yeah, I think I know some of those cars. The graffiti on them from the picture I saw looks like some that I've seen out here.
Yeah, that's for sure. I know you see some of that graffiti, and it's like, yeah, that seems familiar to me. Last time I was sitting at an intersection waiting for the train to go by, I saw that. Well, I took a little video of it with the drone and popped it up on the Thief River Falls radio website and on the Rural Reflections website, too, so people can take a look at it. Now, this first half of the Rural Reflections podcast is always kind of dedicated to coffee talk, and we're just finishing up the deer hunting season, so I thought it might be good to first lead in with a little good music and then maybe talk about deer hunting, current and past.
The 30-point buck.
30-point buck.
30-point buck. 30.
That's a 30-point buck, a classic from the Yoopers, Dave. Now, we used to do a lot of deer hunting when we were kids growing up outside of Viking.
Yes, we sure did, boy. I mean, we hunted them little pieces of woods hard, back and forth and back and forth. It seemed like there was always something that you would chase out of there.
Yep. I agree. I remember it seemed like, it'd be like, I don't know that this is really worth going through this little piece of woods, but, we typically kicked up a deer from them. And I think back in the 70s, it seemed like there wasn't quite as many deer. There weren't quite as many deer. Maybe that's just my imagination.
Oh, no, there wasn't nearly as many deer then. And when I moved to North Dakota in 73,
yep,
the deer was hardly a one in North Dakota. You rarely see one in the part of North Dakota that I was in. And, of course, now they're just thick everywhere, and they're in your backyard. And I've been feeding them out by the shop. And so there are a lot of deer around now, and we're seeing a lot of moose and a lot of other wildlife also.
I saw that picture you posted of the deer eating behind the shop there in Carrington. And first thing I thought is, it looks like a deer preserve there.
Yeah, well, we clean combines out, and of course the hopper's always got a little bit in the bottom.
Yep.
And we do it in that area, and the pheasants and the bird. There must be 200 doves that are hanging around back there, and the deer come in and they eat them. And I actually threw some pumpkins out there because the deer love pumpkins.
Yeah.
And I'd take my extra apples from Apple Tree out there. And the rabbits, and then they munch on that stuff all the time. And it's just a place to put some of my garbage. Plus, it's gone by spring, and animals like it.
You know, it's like a wildlife trail mix almost back there for them. You know, back in the 70s, though, I remember what a big deal it was the night before deer hunting to get together and make sure we had everything put together. Remember that?
Oh, man, yes. Knives sharpened, shells out, holes out, and, of course, had to have a lunch.
Oh, yeah. Lunch was the best. I mean, Mom made sandwich after sandwich on homemade buns, and then she'd put them in those 1 gallon ice cream containers. There was something special about that. And I think she put did she put napkins on top? I always remember there being like some kind of paper or paper towel on top or something.
Oh, yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, it was layered.
That's right.
I mean, you'd have your main course, and then you'd have your dessert and whatever else she put in there. And a lot of that stuff never made it out of the driveway.
That's exactly right. I mean, those cookies, I mean, that was like you just dove past the first couple layers, go to the bottom, follow the curve of the ice cream pail, get down there, grab them cookies, and pull them right out. I mean, that was the move during deer hunting. She put together an awful big smorgasbord. She had a lot of care when she put that together for us, but we just went after it right through the layers.
Yep, that's for sure. It was rarely made it all out of the driveway, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's always fun to have the lunch before lunch. You know, I always can justify it because we had to get up early deer hunting. So I always figured, well, if you back your wake up time off some or make it a little bit sooner, you got to eat a little bit sooner. And that was a pretty good justification for it. Now, in the next part of our Rural Reflections podcast, we're going to talk about old elevators, and not the kind you see at a building that takes you up to the second floor or third floor ladies' wear. We're going to talk about grain elevators. That's coming up in the next half of the Rural Reflections podcast. We're going to do the online column first and be right back. I'm Grant Nelson, and this is Rural Reflections. The new Minnesota Department of Transportation radio tower was built a few weeks ago here in Thief River Falls. It's really nice, 330 feet tall, self-standing, brand new. It's an acknowledgement of the importance of communication to public safety in the area. When I saw it on Thursday, I noticed the old tower, which would soon be replaced, taken down and hauled in for scrap. It made me a little sad to see the new tower in full view of the old, reliable structure that had outlived its planned life and had watched over Thief River Falls all these years. The old tower would have transmitted a lot of different frequencies and helped make northwest Minnesota a safer place. Replacing the tower was the right thing to do, but it still made me just a little sentimental. I know it's an inanimate object, but I still get a little nostalgic. I've watched people and things get old all my life. In some cases, the age has been worn well. Other times, not so much. I've seen people age, mellow, and bloom into happiness. At other times, they seem to become angry, mean, and vindictive as their efforts to preserve their self-concept destroys how they are perceived by others. It could be so much better. I've noticed a few things about age. Mistakes take longer to change, but a person seems to make fewer of them. Learning from past mistakes is combined with a more careful decision-making process, which creates fewer but more productive actions. I also see interactions and people who do not need my input or energy, as neither of us will benefit from the investment. There are people who seek to only absorb energy and use relationships. They're best avoided. To argue with them is to only make them feel validated with your attention. Age has taught me to walk away and leave them on an island of their own creation. As of last week, I now, oftentimes, qualify for the senior discount. I've often thought how age seems to take away certain gifts, mostly physical. I decided this week to see age as an opportunity and forget any negative stigma attached to it. I think it's important to remember there are many people who never enjoyed the opportunity to age. I see age now as an opportunity to challenge some of my own ideas. Humans are so interested in improving themselves from the outside in, which is fine. I want to develop myself more from the inside out. Patience, understanding, and forgiveness are valuable acts that seem to need as much exercise as those physical aspects cherished by humanity. I have no long-term goals, but rather a day-by-day presence in the time and space I occupy to try and develop these characteristics. During the aging process, as long as the outside is becoming rusty, I might just as well try to make the inside shine. I'm Grant Nelson. This is Rural Reflections. Welcome back to the Rural Reflections podcast. Now, Dave, I noticed the other day, we came in from the north of Thief River Falls, and we typically don't do that, but we had ran up to Viking, Lisa and I had, and we drove around a little bit and talked to Jerome Peters for a while and saw what kind of antiques he had, and then we headed back for Thief River Falls, and we're coming in from the north, and I said to her, look at that huge building up there. Is that the elevator? And it was Farmers Co-op Grain and Seed, and I couldn't believe how massive it looked, and I imagine I just haven't come into Thief River Falls from the north for many years, and maybe I hadn't noticed how big it was due to all the concrete silos they put up there. But, you know, elevators have been an awful big part of our lives for an awful long time, even back in the days when there used to be a whole bunch of them instead of just one big one.
Yeah, I know. I always liked the elevator, too. It was fun to go in there, and used to always talk to the guys in there. Dick Halverson and Lawrence Melvey were the guys that were at the elevator in Viking, and the Viking elevator was small. And I remember my first experience with a big elevator was traveling to Salina, Kansas, and, you know, where they talk about these cement 6-pack silos and such like around here, or 4-pack. Well, there was 4 12-packs together in that elevator. It was just humongous. I mean, I didn't even know what it was when I first was coming up to it. But with the elevator that they're destroying here now or tearing down here in town, I was thinking about when the New Holden elevator was built, and that's the last one I saw that was actually wood construction, and how they build it, how they just keep stacking 2x10s or 2x12s or whatever they are on top of each other until they reach whatever height they want. And I was always impressed that that's the way it was built. You know, I always thought there must be more to it than that, but it's just cribbed lumber on top of lumber, you know.
And that worked out pretty good when they knocked down the Viking elevator. It knocked it on its side and it just sat there. I mean, it didn't collapse in on itself or anything like that. And it's kind of sad. A lot of those old elevators are leaving now. There's still a few you see every once in a while, and sometimes individual farmers will own them. But I think it's just gotten to be so much easier just to have grain bins. I mean, we've even seen March Siding, I believe, got torn down here last year out west of Warren. And I think what the deal is it's just not practical for even farmers to have them anymore, because it's so much easier just to have the big grain bin and a little bit more modern facility to handle your grain with.
Yeah, and the big grain bins, you know, they have, like everything else, so much automation. I mean, the farmer can turn on his cooling fans or check his bin temperatures, you know, from Florida in the wintertime on his cell phone and turn on the fans or set when he wants them automatically on or whatever, you know. So it's a lot different than trying to store some wet grain in a wooden bin and hope it comes back out by gravity when you want it out, you know.
Boy,
so yeah, it's all changed. You know, there's not much similarity anymore, because the elevators, if they want to be viable, have to be able to load a 110 cart train load in 24 hours or whatever it is, you know. So that takes some pretty significant equipment and enough storage for 110 grain cars.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's two things. That's why you see all those loops and all the multiple sidings, and then also a lot of automation to get all that to go through, because to have that many people, well, it's pretty hard to find that many people probably to load it using, you know, more old time methods. So nowadays there's a tremendous amount of automation. I remember when the Viking elevator, the big thing I thought about that was the pop machine. It was one of those that sat flat, and then you slid the bottle bottles to the end and brought it out. No, let's see. I take it back. It wasn't like that. It was a side bottle one. You'd open up that little door, and then you put your money in, and then you could pull out a bottle of pop, and it was always like grape pop or orange pop or something like that. It was just really good stuff, and it was really cold.
Yeah, there was about 3 choices. There was grape, orange, and root beer.
Yep.
And they had the kind that hung by the neck at the gas station in Viking. Oh. I remember that. You put your dime in, and then the little thing would open up, and you could slide the bottle to the end. Either that or Marlowe used to just take a padlock and unlock a padlock if you gave him a dime or something.
That's good. You know, one thing I remember about the Viking elevator, I don't go in elevators enough to know if it still carries through, but it smelled good in there because they had that fanning mill or whatever the heck it was to find out how much weed seed was in the grain, and that'd be running all the time. And I think it roughed up the grain enough so you could smell it a little bit, and it always smelled so good.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of smells from farming in different places so that you remember. They kind of stick with you, and I have always loved the smell of the earth or dirt opening up, when people start doing field work in the spring, and I love the smell of curing alfalfa hay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Those are both some awfully good smells. And if you grew up on a farm, you really learned to appreciate them. I mean, it was just, you had to just appreciate the little things. And I think that's kind of a good thing to learn as you go through life instead of constantly trying to reach for the next higher thing. Just kind of appreciate what's there already, and it makes it a lot better for you. Dave, you got anything else for us this week?
I guess not. I'm just hoping for one more nice week before we see winter, and then if we can get another nice week after that, and a couple more, that'd be really good.
That sounds all right. Not only get us through Thanksgiving, but get us through Christmas. And actually, if we go that far, we might as well head for Easter. What do you think?
I'd say it'd be fine with me.
Thanks a lot, Dave. We'll talk to you next week. There he is, my brother Dave Nelson in Carrington, North Dakota. I'm Grant Nelson here at the studios of Thief River Falls Radio, and this is the Rural Reflections Podcast.